This podcast is brought to you with limited interruption by Rudy Luther Toyota. Whether looking for an exciting brand new Toyota, a certified pre-owned vehicle, or getting quality routine maintenance and service for your vehicle, Rudy Luther Toyota is the place to go. Rudy Luther Toyota, the southeast corner of 394 and 169 in Golden Valley. Broadcasting live on AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota, in the evenings on WCPT 820 Chicago's Progressive Talk, and in the overnights 1150 AM KKNW in Seattle. It's the Matt McNeil Show on your Tuesday. Good to have you with us today. Matt, Patrick here. Patrick Coolican is going to join us from the Minnesota Reformer coming up here in the 4 o'clock hour. I've got a humdinger of a story we got to talk about coming up in the 4 o'clock hour as well. Lots of great stuff today. Guest free in the 3, so you're more than welcome to call. If you like, Patrick, how are you today?
Doing well. How are you today?
I'm hectic. I've been running around. I grabbed breakfast with a friend this morning, and then I had to go to the Target run. And I go get a haircut. Now, if you're looking at me on the beautiful broadcast, you can video me, because that's how I got into radio, is to be seen. Anyway, yes, you can watch me on the live stream. Hello there. You'll notice the hair looks somewhat presentable. I no longer look like a 1970s henchman from a TV drama. I actually have some style again. I'm getting in there. We're going to have our driveway redone. We had to have that redone. The people, when they first put it in, put it up against the concrete foundation. And this was, 50s, and so it's finally kind of like, okay, this needs to kind of get away. We're starting to see some water and stuff like this, so we need to get this off the driveway, off the foundation of the house. They're supposed to come. These companies, they generally, what they do is they kind of put days into their schedule for rain, in case they have rain. Well, we haven't had any rain here in the Twin Cities for a while. And so we're expecting them on Friday, and I was just informed, hey, they're here today, or going to be here tomorrow, rather. So we've been loading things into pods and stuff like that. I am sweaty and dirty. I was a clean man before when I was ready to go. And I am a filthy, filthy man. And I'm dirty, too.
Well, that's why I'm glad there's a door closed between you and I today.
I would not be surprised. There is something just magical moving boxes you haven't moved in 10 years and saying, oh, wow, that's an infestation. It's like, wow. So that's where the rats are. Oh, okay. All right. Nice to see that there. I've got I have to defrost the freezer, and that's a pretty big problem. So it's like, get all the food out of the freezer. We got to figure out, I hope you're all hungry. We're having 8 meals tonight. That sort of thing. It is part of the life. I'm glad I'm getting this done, because I don't want the you shouldn't have that. As a matter of fact, it was funny when we first moved into our neighborhood. The guy, Al Schrupp, was the guy that used to live right next door to me, and Al was a blue collar concrete guy. This is back in the days, the 1950s, when you worked blue collar jobs and you could move into suburbia, and that's what he did. And he was there, and he said when he moved in, most of the neighbors were dirt driveways because the neighborhood hadn't really been developed. And his concrete group, basically he would go in there and he'd help lay the concrete, and he talked to his neighbor when they laid the driveway for that house, and he said, don't put the driveway up against the house. He goes, we really want to. He said, don't do it. We really want to. Don't do it. We really want to. They did it. So I'm kind of glad we're getting it done, because it's little things like this when you are young, before you have kids and you're just buying a house, you don't realize the complexities of some of this stuff. But now I do. So I don't want my basement full of water. No, that's not why. I don't want to do that. So 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. So I'm going to get into some poll numbers here a little bit later on. I want to talk about some things that I feel are pointing into a very specific direction. But I'm going to take some time to start the show, at least, talking about, Israel and what happened today, and what I think Israel, and particularly Benjamin Netanyahu, is trying to do in Israel. Now, once again, I'm going to say this at the get-go. I support Israel. They had a right to strike back after what happened in October. Absolutely. That was absolutely abhorrent. Their response at first was very justified, and it had become very heavy-handed, to say the least. They have continually struck Palestinians in shelters and areas there. They've killed lots of innocent people who have nothing to do with the terrorist strike. They basically have pushed everyone out. It looks like it's a massive land grab in Palestine and in the Gaza, I should say, in the Gaza Strip. It looks like a massive land grab for lakefront or oceanfront property. That's what and they're pushing everyone out, and they don't care how they do it. It's been heavy-handed. It's unfortunate the way things have gone here, and it has definitely. I can tell you right now, I am getting to the point now where I am not. Okay, I support Israel, but do I think that we should be supporting it doing this? I do not anymore. This is heavy-handed for heavy-handed's sake. In case you didn't hear the news today, let me read the news. They had this at the top of the hour here, but this is a pretty interesting thing. Israel didn't inform the Biden administration ahead of its intelligence operation that included exploding thousands of Hezbollah members' pagers devices, two U.S. officials told Axios. The explosions killed at least 9 people, including a child. This is including a child. And I'm sure I'm going to get people say, well, that child was the mastermind. No, I don't know. Kid. I know the next thing is, well, they've killed children too. I'm not denying that. But, killing children, and that's when you have an operation of this nature, you're going to get a lot of people who have nothing to do with who you're angry at, in this case Hezbollah. You're going to get a lot of people that have nothing to do with Hezbollah, and they're going to have this happen. The explosion killed at least 9 people, including a child, and wounded 2,750 others, among them many members of Hezbollah and its military units. Once again, not denying that Hezbollah got a hit here, but a lot of other people in Lebanon did not. The U.S. was not aware of this operation, nor was it involved, the U.S. State Department spokesperson said, adding that the U.S. is still gathering information about the explosions in Lebanon. It didn't confirm that Israel was behind the attack. The operation also shut down a significant part of Hezbollah's military command and control system. Hezbollah accused Israel of conducting the attack and pledged to retaliate. Israel officials said they are aware of a major escalation on the northern border as possible after the attack, and said Israel Defense Forces are on high alert for possible response from Hezbollah. The operation was approved earlier this week during security meetings with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and senior members of his cabinet and the heads of security service, a source with knowledge said. So this was, even though the United States is not saying it, apparently sources have told Axios at least, no, this was Netanyahu and the Israelis. I think it was pretty obvious it was, but this is a confirmation. It took place a day after U.S. envoy Amos Hochstein visited Israel and warned Netanyahu of the consequences of a major escalation in Lebanon. On Tuesday, Netanyahu and Israel's Minister of Defense spent several hours at the IDF command center in Tel Aviv. The Israeli security cabinet decided on Monday night to update the goals of the war, included a safe return of displaced Israelis to their homes on the border with Lebanon. Israel will continue to act and implement this goal. Yeah, okay, so this is, it seems like this is a new attempt. Now, and once again, this is to say it's a brazen assault, I mean, it's kind of complicated, which is a huge red flag for me. All right, so the attack in October was not Hezbollah per se. I mean, Hezbollah and Israel have had a long problem, but it wasn't Lebanon. And if you're doing something like this, you're attacking Lebanon. I mean, let's just be honest. I understand you're only trying to say, well, we're just trying to go after Hezbollah, but you're going after Lebanon too. There is no way on the planet this was just in the works this week. Not something this complicated. Not something this extraordinary. If it was, well, I just can't. There's no way. There's just no way. This had to have been a plan that maybe not authorized, but started the gears for this plan started turning at least 6 months ago. At least Israel had the intention of going after Hezbollah in Lebanon and, per se, as well attacking Lebanon. When I look at this, so in case you don't know, in Israel, Netanyahu and his current administration is not exactly popular. I think I read that they would more than likely lose an election if they had one today, that most people want them gone. What seems to be going on now is Netanyahu and his administration trying to create a situation to where no matter who comes in after them, they have no option but to fight these 19 wars that Israel is declaring on all their enemies. And it's paraphrasing, but multiple fronts, multiple enemies, multiple people, and they're trying to create a situation where there is no way for a less, military option heavy government to basically back off this without giving them the quick ability of saying, see, you should have put us back in there. We would be bombing them into a submission. Doesn't matter who they are. They're all getting bombed, and we're going to take over the land. That's kind of what it seems like is happening, which is really kind of scary. Now, I have talked about, Israel really wants to go after Iran, but they're not that dumb. I mean, going into Iran and trying to take over Iran, trying to military fight there, will be a mess. They have been prepping for it. You're not going to be able to land forces there. You're just not. That's why Benjamin Netanyahu wants the Americans to go do all the dirty work for him. Cost us a few 100,000 American soldiers so he can step over them to plant the Israeli flag in Tehran and say, I did it. And I am not for that. If you've studied the military capability and what it would take to go into Iran, it is too steep of a price for us to pay in American blood. And if you're one of these people that says we should do something like that, well, sign your kids up first. Sacrifice begins at home, because I'm going to tell you what, I'm not about to sacrifice a few 100,000 people for this. That being said, it clearly seems to me at this point what Netanyahu's goal is to basically put everything on fire and make it impossible for a fire department to come in and put the fire out, for lack of a better way to say it. I mean, that's what at least it seems like, because this wasn't this week. There's no way on the planet this whole plan against Hezbollah and Lebanon and that little girl that got killed, that there's no way on the planet that this just happened. It just did not. So if you have to look at motivations, that's at least what's pointing for me. So we'll take a break, come back. It's the Matt McNeil Show. It's the Matt McNeil Show. Good to have you with us. 952-946-6205. So I want to talk a little bit about polling numbers. And once again, I do not want – this is not an endorsement of the polls. Once again, I'm going to say this. Every poll we have seen since Roe v. Wade was overturned has undercounted the Democratic vote by 5 to 15 points. Once again, we just saw this in Wisconsin on their primary night. They had two questions on their ballot, which were put up there by Republicans that were supposed to stymie the Democratic governor from being able to spend federal dollars, and they both were, at the time of the election, it's too close to call, and they both overwhelmingly went for the Democrats in that state. So it is once again, and that is just the latest. I mean, you've got districts which were plus 30 R, which all of a sudden are plus 14 R. You've got, which is a huge change. You have right now, you have races where the Democrat was predicted to lose by 1 or 2 points, and they end up winning by 6. And no, it's not some mass conspiracy of 1 million people involved. Come on, that's just stupid. It's just the fact that they're undercounting, whether they're intentionally or unintentionally, they're undercounting the left vote. And it's one of the reasons why I think a lot of people have already started saying that, especially since the debate performance, that Harris is, why do you think Trump imploded last week with the, Taylor Swift stuff and Laura Loomer and, trying to make, dogs and cats being eaten in Ohio a thing? It's because he knows he is losing his grip, and it's becoming harder and harder. There's a few numbers which I find to be very interesting. First is, and once again, take this with a grain of salt. These are polls. How legit they are, we have yet to see. Whom do you trust more with the economy? This is from Political Polls. They just post polling numbers up on social media. Who do you trust more with the economy? Now, up until Joe Biden left this race, overwhelmingly more people said they trusted Trump. Not the case anymore. As a matter of fact, Harris has led Trump now by a point in the last two surveys of this, which, once again, they have been undercounting the left vote. If that is true, even without, that is a huge problem for Donald Trump, because his entire argument now is just scaring people into voting for him. And if, and one of the things that he's been doing is the economy. And if you haven't seen it, the economy is actually really good right now. And, I know that there's conservative guy out there sitting in front of his pickup truck saying, gas cost me a ton. Well, you're driving a pickup truck, sir. It's the least fuel efficient vehicle you could possibly buy. Maybe you should look in the mirror. That being said, yeah, gas was pretty cheap when no one was driving on the roads during the pandemic. But overall, prices are doing better, and inflation is down, wages are up, the economy is doing pretty good. I mean, who was it? Was it Vance that went on CNBC and they tried to say, oh, well, tell me one person that thinks the economy is doing well. And the guy said, anyone that's involved in the Wall Street thinks it's doing great right now because we're hitting record numbers. And he said, well, that doesn't matter because he lost his entire argument. That if they are having trouble with that, that's a big sign. There was a story out today where Democrats said it's likely that the Democrats are going to start spending more money in Texas and Florida, which is a huge red flag. Reminder, Republicans, and we talked, I think it was early last week, we talked about how the Republicans have been pulling money out of Virginia, New Hampshire, Minnesota, states which have clearly become and that was an Axios story. States where they clearly have, kind of the shift has happened since Harris. And they're not necessarily states that they need to win for them to have a path to victory. So henceforth, they're consolidating down. Once again, most of the money for the Republican Party right now is in Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada. Those are the states. And they pretty much have to take a clean sweep of those for them to be able to win. They can lose, I think, either Michigan or Pennsylvania, but they have to win North Carolina. They have to win Georgia. They have to win Arizona. And they have to win Nevada. And, yeah, those are that's what they're saying has to happen. So you have that, the fact that now polling has shown that the Democrats are indeed making it somewhat competitive in Florida, somewhat competitive in Texas. And reminder, this whole thing about the Republicans taking over the Senate is presuming they don't lose Rick Scott's seat down in Florida. They don't lose Ted Cruz's seat in Texas. Those are supposedly safe seats, and both of those races are shockingly close. And once again, Florida, as I've mentioned, has that constitutional amendment to enshrine abortion rights into the state. Needs to pass by 60, which, once again, I think Republicans put that in there thinking to themselves, see, we'll never get it passed. But now it's motivating the pro-abortion group, which generally runs about 72% in Florida, to get the vote out. So, careful what you wish for. Harris has got her first net favorability positive. Her net positivity is now 46.6 to 46.5, which is pretty huge because for 3 years she was underwater. Why? Because, it's easy to bash on a vice president, and Republicans basically kind of spend a lot of money to bash on Biden and Kamala Harris. And, but now that she's the front of the ticket, guess what? People are paying attention, and her net favorability. I think that debate did such damage. Joe Rogan came out today and said it's over for Trump. He said that Kamala Harris is just hitting it out of the park and that Trump has no chance. Joe freaking Rogan, who had RFK Jr. on speed dial for his show, he now has said that that's the case. But there is one thing in particular that I have seen multiple times in the last 2 days, which are a huge red flag, got to be a huge red flag for Trump. And that is in general election polls. And once again, these polls have undercounted Democrats lately. You're starting to see Harris lead by 6. There was one today she was leading by 7. I saw today. Now, once again, the quirks of the system. We have an electoral college, not just a popular vote wins. But there comes a point where if you're leading the popular vote by that much, it's almost impossible for you. I mean, you have to, it's almost impossible for you to override that and get the electoral college to go your way. It is almost impossible. And so, yeah, when you look at this, things are looking good. Now, I'll say this. Get your cabooses out there, door knock, volunteer, phone call, donate, and make sure everyone you know is registered to vote. We'll take a break, come back. It's the Matt McNeil Show. Broadcasting on the evenings on WCPT 820 Chicago's Progressive Talk Nighttime, 99, 11:50 a.m. KKNW in Seattle, and in the afternoons on AM 950, the Progressive Voice of Minnesota. It's the Matt McNeil Show. Nice to have you with us today, 952-946-6205. So, by the way, I got Kathy Griffin tickets to give away next hour, too. Ooh, that's right. All right, just stick around for that. So, since I'm talking about this, I saw this story come up today, and I just had to read through it here because it is pretty spectacular. There is a definitive celebrity vacuum on the right. It's a story about who has exactly endorsed each side of the aisle right now. And they go through this, and it is pretty remarkable that every actor or pretty much everyone that's endorsed the Democrats are the most popular people, and the people that endorse Republicans are, well, marginal at best. And I know you'll say to me, but that's in your metro area where you have big arenas and stadiums and concert halls where they can fill them up. But out here at the Jumberley County Fair, we have a stage of 100 people, and Creed was fantastic. And Creed, I bring up Creed because apparently the guy from Creed, now, first of all, you're going to be surprised, they were on tour. Now, that being said, apparently he came on stage and he did one of those right-wing, we're not a democracy, we're a republic. Oh, for God's sakes, really? Yeah, well, I guess with arms are not wide open, Sorry. Oh, yeah. But hey, good luck on your next tour there. I have been amazed at how much fodder the Republicans have made of shut up and sing, or shut up and play football, or shut up and act. I didn't come to hear you say your politics. And how many of you have a conservative family member or friend who has posted that, followed almost immediately about Roseanne Barr is a great American for her public endorsement and embracing of Donald Trump? And if you've ever gotten to say, well, why is that? Why are you telling this other person to stop? And then they can't. aren't on both sides? And basically they'll tell you, nope. Nope. That if you're not on Trump's side, then you need to be quiet. It's kind of like how today they're trying to use this second assassination attempt to shut down, talk about Project 2025, because they don't have an answer for Project 2025. The same agenda they proudly bragged about for months prior to Biden leaving and prior to pretty much everyone finding out what Project 2025 was all about. And so now they're trying to say, you guys, the problem is you guys are talking about it, holding us accountable for our statements of endorsement. Yeah, it's kind of that way. It's the way it works sometimes. Well, this, they basically, by the way, I got to tell you, last night I finished watching The Boys on Amazon. Now, Matt's warning corner, okay? The Boys is hyper violent and hyper sexual and hyper everything. Be advised before you go and preview that series that is adult, okay? You really need to have that in mind. That being said, it is the greatest parody of MAGA America I have ever seen, and I'm a little late finishing out this season. I finished it last night, and I swear to God, I have no idea how the writing on that show was so predicting of where we are today. I have no idea, but I've actually had multiple times where I've said today, since watching the finale of that show, did that happen in the real world or was that on The Boys? It really is. It's one of those things where it's like they nailed it on a lot of things. I mean, the character Firecracker is, holy gosh, is it Marjorie Taylor Greene as a superhero, and it's and I use hero as a just the character term. It is remarkable how well that show has pegged Republican politics and MAGA America to a T. And it's one of the things I'll mention was Dennis Quaid, his son, Jack Quaid, he had a son with Meg Ryan. His son, Jack Quaid, is on that show. And I can't imagine, I mean, I got to believe that's, you can't be a Republican and be on that show because it is so, I mean, I guess you could, if you're a really good actor, I'll say this about Kelsey Grammer. Kelsey Grammer, I disagree with his politics. I think Kelsey Grammer is hilarious. I think he's a pretty decent actor too. And I mean, maybe he could pull it off. I mean, I maybe he could, but I don't think Jack Quaid is agreeing with his dad in regards to politics. I'll get to that here in a second. But if you look at TV and music and stuff like this, I mean, Kamala Harris plays a song at a rally and the artist quickly says, "Thank you very much for playing it." Donald Trump plays a song at one of his rallies, and they're given a cease and desist order. There's a cool vacuum on the Republican side. And I think that's what really bugs them, is that they don't have the cool kids out there. And I have to imagine it's taking every bit of will to stop these guys from going after Taylor Swift, considering how popular she is. Anyway, let me get to the story here. Celebrities were prominently featured at both parties' national conventions this year. Actresses Kerry Washington and actor Tony Goldwyn held a surprise scandal reunion on the Democratic National Convention stage, throwing their support behind Vice President Kamala Harris. Dana White, the CEO of Ultimate Fighting, I'll take Kerry Washington any day, introduced former President Trump. And by the way, I should be reminded, he introduced Trump in the position that's usually reserved for a spouse or family member, but they had the head of the Ultimate Fighting Championship as opposed to Melania introducing Donnie T. Well, I mean, Donnie T's a little busy. If you're going to get handsy with Laura Loomer, I mean, come on. You can't have the wifey around, can you, Donnie T? I've seen more photos. The more photos I see of those two where they're clearly in each other's personal space, Yeah. Mushroom farming. Anyway, sorry, Matt, bad Matt. Anyway, Billie Eilish and Phineas. Vote like your life depends on it. Singer Billie Eilish, her musical brother Phineas, endorsed the Harris Walls ticket on National Voter Registration Day. Billie Eilish, one of the biggest singers out there right now, an absolutely lovely celebrity. I think she's pretty cool. We are voting for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz because they're fighting to protect our reproductive freedom, our planet, and our democracy, Eilish said. Her brother added, we can't let extremists control our lives, our freedoms, and our future. Eilish concluded the message with a call to vote like your life depends on it, because it does. Taylor Swift, childless cat lady for Harris. In a late-night Instagram post following the conclusion of the first and perhaps only debate between Harris and Trump, Swift shared her endorsement of the vice president to her 283 million Instagram followers. Okay, you guys on the right love Rush Limbaugh. Rush Limbaugh. Yeah, that guy. Horrible human being. You guys think it was great because he'd get like 15 million viewers per show or per radio show. He'd have 15 million listeners. And that's really good for a radio show. What's killing you is that's nothing compared to Taylor Swift and 283 million Instagram followers. Granted, a lot overseas. But even if only half of those people are in America, it's 140 million. You got nothing in this country that's going to be able to give you that kind of saturation. Over 306,000 people have visited vote.gov using the URL Swift had shared online, prompting followers to register. Now, once again, not every one of those people is an American citizen. They could have just visited, but still, that's a lot of people getting registered. I think she is a steady-handed, gifted leader, and I believe we can accomplish so much more in this country if we are led by calm and not chaos, the pop superstar said of Harris, who she said fights for the rights and causes, I believe, need a warrior and champion to them. Young voters, a key voting bloc for both campaigns, have decided to reach, made up a significant portion of Swift's enormous base. Stevie Nicks and Aubrey Plaza, of course, was community. They shared a picture holding the frame "Grumpy Cat" caption Harris Walls. Of course, the childless dog lady Stevie Nicks and Aubrey Plaza doing that. Other people who like Swift's posts include Dan Levy and musician Lil Nas X, George Clooney. I'm super excited to support Harris. After Harris began her Crunch Time campaign, an avalanche of celebrities came forward, including George Clooney. Clooney, a longtime Democratic fundraiser, endorsed Harris after calling on Biden to depart the race. In his statement endorsing Harris, Clooney applauded the president's decision, writing, Biden has shown us true leadership. Spike Lee is there, celebrating Harris's campaign the same day. Biden dropped out once again, sharing photos of her on Instagram and writing, once again, a sister comes to the rescue. On Wednesday, he shared a photo holding a sign that reads, Kamala for the people. Charlie XCX, and I like Charlie XCX. The Brat campaign, that comes from her. If you're wondering where that came from, if you're an older person, you're wondering, where does this Brat summer, Brat fall come from? That's Charlie XCX. Charlie XCX also weighed in with the short but sweet message just hours after Biden's endorsement of Vice President, writing on Twitter, Kamala is Brat, which actually means good, okay? The British musician's post was swiftly embraced by the campaign. Jeff Bridges, Mark Hamill, Mark Ruffalo, all white dude celebs for Harris. Hulk, the Dude, and Luke Skywalker and others joined numbers of Harris rallies, including VP nominee Governor Walz. A rally for Harris on the White Dudes for Harris Zoom call. It raised around $4 million. A number of other celebrities, such as musician John Legend, Barbara Streisand, talk show host Oprah, businessman Mark Cuban, actress Viola Davis, among others. Really, they have a pretty cool lineup. So outside of the guy from the United Ultimate Fighting, let's run down the Republican powerhouse. Elon Musk. Okay. He has been throwing a lot of support behind Trump. Musk retweeted a number of posts accusing ABC commentators of giving Harris favorable treatment. And that's the thing, is it's not just the fact that you guys got lame celebrities. It's all your lame celebrities keep trying to win games you lost a while back. You need to get everyone back in here and play the game again. Hulk Hogan, that's right. If you're, like me in 1984, you're going crazy about that one. Not so much today. Former wrestler Hulk Hogan took the stage at the RNC to endorse Trump, ripping off his jacket and shirt to reveal a Trump Vance muscle tank underneath. When they took a shot at my hero, he said of the assassination attempt just before the RNC, and they tried to kill the President of the United States, enough was enough. Once again, insisting that outside of the person that shot him in Pennsylvania was clearly a mentally deranged individual who had access to a gun. You guys continuing to try to actually say that the Democrats are doing this is just stupid. And it's, hey, I don't think anyone deserves to have assassination attempts against them. Trump has had two. In both cases, clearly mentally compromised people have been there. If you want to get rid of this goodwill that you're getting from a lot of people, continue with this. I don't care. It was the Democrats. Shut up. It wasn't. Kid Rock, they call him a country music singer. And, I mean, country, sure. Music, I don't know. Singer. Ooh, gosh, no. I think that's false advertising. He performed at the 2024 RNC, has been a fervent supporter of President Trump. Amber Rose, the model and rapper Amber Rose. Rapper? Are you thinking like candy rapper? Through her, sorry. Oh, no, rapper. Okay. Through her support behind Trump as well. Barstool Sports founder Dave Portnoy, Dennis Quaid, Roseanne Barr, John Voight, among others. By the way, Beyonce is still out there. I'm getting ready to imagine she's going to be endorsing Kamala here before too long. Republicans are mad because that's the lamest lineup of celebrities they could possibly have. And they look at what we've got on the left, and it hurts them inside. It's the Matt McNeil Show. It's the Matt McNeil Show. Nice to have you with us here on a Tuesday. 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. I'm going to go with Heartland Signal. They got a good story out from about a Minnesota race up here, the Minnesota 2nd Congressional District seat. Now, before I start talking about the Republican, one thing I do want to actually talk about is the plea. And this is not just to Angie Craig, who is running in the Minnesota 2nd District as the Democratic incumbent, but to all Democrats across the country who make a fatal mistake. Do not run a campaign in a tight district with the mindset of, I really agree with Republicans more than my own party. I'll vote against my own party in a heartbeat. I didn't like Joe Biden. I'm glad he's gone. I stood up to my own party all the time. You do that, you're going to lose. Because I want to make sure you understand something. You piss off a lot of Democrats with that. And I have watched time and time again over the years that strategy tried. And it has never worked. I have never seen it work. Meanwhile, in case you want to know what you should do, you have a master's class in how to be a proud Democrat and appeal across the aisle with Governor Tim Walz, the vice presidential candidate, who is going into rural Pennsylvania, going into rural Michigan, going into rural Georgia, and meeting with people, shaking hands, changing people's minds. Not by saying, I'll sell out my own party in a heartbeat. By saying, I'm a proud Democrat, and here's why you should be voting Democrat. Integrity matters. Okay? And if you are a Democrat, and I get it, you might be in a tough race there, trust me, trying to pretend to be the other guy is not going to win the seat for you. Because all of a sudden, sometime around early October, you're going to start getting polling that says, oh, you're weak with your own base. Because you've kind of turned a lot of your own base off. Just the way it goes. So be like Tim Walz. Be a proud Democrat, because proud Democrats, guess what? They win. Proud Democrats win. Good wages, health care for all, family values, yeah, that's the Democratic Party. And on top of that, you can throw in issues like climate change and abortion rights, and guess what? You've got a winning platform. If the first words out of your mouth every time I hear you talk is, I disagree with my own party, Auntie Craig, you're not running as a Democrat. You're running as you're basically saying to the people who are your own party, I'm taking you for granted. I'm only focusing on a few hundred Republicans, and I don't like that. It doesn't work. This is not about me. This is just, don't do that. My God, I've seen Democrats grab defeat from the jaws of victory time and time again with that bad strategy. Now, that being said, it does help Angie Craig that Joe Tarab is there. The Republican candidate for the Minnesota 2nd Congressional District seat recently claimed that he opposes federal abortion restrictions, despite indicating the opposite of an anti-abortion survey. During an interview with CBS News Minnesota last month, Tarab plainly stated that he opposes federal regulations on abortion when asked about his stance on the issue. You know, to be clear on this, I'm against a federal ban or federal restrictions on abortion. He told CBS News it is not a federal issue. It's a state issue. I think we need to move forward where we have consensus on this, like making sure we support adoption and foster care. Despite the interview, Tarab indicated the opposite position on a pro-life questionnaire conducted by the Minnesota Citizens Concern for Life. In the survey, Tarab answered yes to multiple questions regarding the federal regulation of reproductive rights. Here are some of the questions. As an elected representative, do you recognize a federal role in protecting unborn children? Yes. Would you vote against any federal legislation that would place new limits on the ability of states to regulate abortion? For example, the so-called Women's Health Protection Act, sometimes referred to by critics as the Abortion Without Limits Until Birth Act, which is the successor to the Freedom of Choice Act. Yes, he replied. Would you vote for chemical abortion legislation related to restricting its use, supporting the collecting and reporting of data on complications and increasing safeguards for women? Yes. So, once again, another Republican who, because this issue has gone south on them, and once again, the news media is failing a lot of times to point out this isn't, back in February they were pro-abortion. No, these people spent decades fighting against abortion rights, fighting to overturn Roe v. Wade. Decades doing this. It's only in the last few months when all of a sudden they realize that they can't win with this, that all of a sudden it's like, I don't know where you get the idea. I'm against people's choice. I would rather stay out of it. They're lying. They are lying. They've got 20 years of record on these issues. Proudly. Before 2022, they proudly had their record out there. And now, why do you guys keep bringing up this issue? I don't know. You brought it up for 50 years and then took away people's rights. So, yeah. During the CBS interview, Tarab attempted to backtrack the survey answers when a host pressed him on them. He claimed he meant the federal government supporting adoption and foster care. Of course you did. I think you're lying your caboose off there, Tarab. I think you are. And that is really supporting adoption. I have so many friends that have faced struggles with going through all this, blah, 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 blah. Still, Tarab's claims are inconsistent with his answers on the survey, which does not mention adoption or foster services, and specifically asks about federal regulations to restrict abortion care. So he's trying to, well, the question didn't say that. It said this. No, the question was about abortion. You saying it had to do with adoption is just something you're pulling out of your caboose because you don't have anything else. So, yeah. I will say this. Here's why I think all Republicans are absolute hacks on this issue. If you really wanted to decrease abortion in this country, if you made health care free for the mother and for the child for the pregnancy and then up to 2 years after the birth, that you gave them housing assistance and you gave them food assistance and you gave them diaper assistance and you gave them child care assistance and you got them some job training, then maybe then you would get rid of the stigma that you guys have created on this issue. But at the end of the day, Republicans, the first thing they say is, well, that will cost too much money, which means that is your true God. The heck with you guys. Chicago, Seattle, talk to you later. Minneapolis, St. Paul, hour 2 up next. Hour number 2 of the show here on your Tuesday. Matt, Patrick, Brett Johnson is kind enough to step into the studio with us. Hey, Brett.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going well. Were you in here the last time I gave the Boar's Head meat update?
I don't think I was, no.
Because, you know, that they had all the recall because they had listeria outbreak. And it's actually sickened some people, killed some people. They finally, and then they had the release of the FDA, the inspection reports on their facility out, and this was in Jarrett, Virginia, and they didn't clean anything. There was like pools of blood on the floor. I mean, mold and mildew. It is a miracle that this didn't get a lot worse. Well, Boar's Head, and once again, my feeling on Boar's Head, and I've read a lot on this story, it seems like some executives wanted a little bit of extra money, and so we can cut some of the cut. We don't have to cut these things. And it, you know, if you're making, I don't know, a meat product, you probably don't want to go with the cheapest way and think it's going to go well. And it didn't. They're actually going to close that plant now because it's the public relations on it is just such a nightmare. I'm going to be surprised if Boar's Head survives this.
Yeah, considering just what you're initially telling me, that's disgusting when you're having mold and mildew in the facility, no cleaning and thing. We'll just spray it with the hose and we'll be fine cleaning it up. Yeah, that sounds like an absolute mess. Close that place down.
Well,
that's why we need regulations, especially when it comes to food.
I love Republicans who say we shouldn't have regulations because if, say, a loved one dies, which you could have prevented with a regulation, well, you can have your recourse is you can sue them as they try to start, work tort reform, saying that if a family member dies, you get $100. That's all you have to require to, because you can't stop corporate America. That's
somehow they come up with this. Well, you should have known the facility was in this type of shape and shouldn't have bought the food. Whose fault is that?
You wanted non-moldy meat? Well, what are you talking about with us then? Okay, you know what we are. It's not mint flavor. Oh, God, sorry.
I want burgers tonight now.
Oh, yum.
Not from that place, though.
Enchiladas, you say. Speaking of dead meat, Mike Lindell. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. On that. MyPillow founder Mike Lindell's election crime group allegedly sent out emails requesting personal information from local officials and information about security threats by impersonating a nonprofit cybersecurity initiative. Okay. The Lindell-backed Election Crime Bureau emailed at least one Georgia county on September 5th, asking officials to respond to a survey about the nonprofit Center for Internet Security and its Electronic Infrastructure Information Sharing and Analysis Center, which is funded by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. This is out of a Rolling Stone article. The Election Crime Bureau has been investigating what steps have been taken in all 3,143 counties across America to ensure the security of the upcoming election, reads the email from Lindell's Election Crime Bureau in support of the investigation. The survey asked election officials for their home addresses, cell phone numbers, and other personal information, and asked whether they were using two monitoring systems developed by CIS, and the cybersecurity firm issued an advisory warning to election officials warning the Lindell organization was impersonating them. CIS believe multiple reports and emails, the Election Crime Bureau being disseminated that could lead to receipt, believe that these emails are from the Elections Infrastructure Information Sharing and Analysis Center. Joseph Kirk, the election supervisor of Bartow County in Georgia, I'm going to guess, confirmed to Rolling Stone and American Doom, whatever, that
and what?
American, I don't know if that's, is he American Gladiator, American Doom, wasn't he? I loved him on that show. Message, by the way, Doom, just letting you know, from Election Crime Bureau allotted the spam filter, which he only learned about the email after receiving the advisory. The next day, he basically went to his spam file, found things going into spam. Apparently, for the staffer for the Election Crime Bureau accused CIS of engaging in disinformation campaign and attempting to restrict access to information about election security by basically having their emails go into spam. Dude, you're asking for people's, you're dishonest about, it seems like you're being, at least it seems from the story, you're being dishonest about representing yourself. But you're asking for people's personal information, which we all know that's not good. And yeah, Mike, you saw, we talked about this. You saw the DHL now he has to pay them.
Oh, yeah.
I don't. What's this guy going to do when everything's gone, man? I mean, I'm sure he'll be out there somewhere, strolling the countryside with his pillow.
I have election fraud proof now. I talked to this guy down the street who said he saw something from his brother's friend.
Oh God, yeah. Finally, and I want to call this out because if there's another story out here that has been put out that they're a different group, not the Democratic Party, a Facebook group this is a Patriots Run Project, has run third-party candidates against Republicans. And the Republicans, guess what? This is going to be rich. They're upset about what they're considering to be fake third-party candidates infiltrating their campaigns that might hurt them. Third-party candidate running in the 2nd District with Angie Craig and Tarab was recruited by a secretive group that has since been banned from Facebook. Thomas Bowman admits he's politically outspoken on Facebook, so he wasn't surprised when the Patriots Run Project contacted him through the social media site earlier this year asking some questions about viewpoints. Then they suggested there are good viewpoints and I should consider running for office. I thought about it. Seemed like a good idea. Bowman acknowledged that his Brooklyn Center home, okay, I know the 2nd District. I can tell you Brooklyn Center ain't in the 2nd District.
Nope.
He admits that it's in the 5th Congressional District, but the Patriots Run group told him it would be easiest to get signatures needed to run for the 2nd District. Bowman filed the paperwork required, including at least 1,000 signatures, June 4th, with the Secretary of State, so he's legitimately on the ballot. But I find this, I want to remind everyone out there, and first of all, the Star Tribune has got this on a big headline right now. They didn't really have this when it was clear for years the Republican Party was actively recruiting pro-marijuana candidates to run in all the races where it was a tight race to basically siphon off votes away from the Democrats. And we actually had the marijuana candidates tell us straightforward, oh, yeah, the Republicans gave me a call. They want me to do this.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, the Reformer, who we'll be talking about in a second, ran a few of those types of articles talking about how these guys were directly contacted by Republicans saying, hey, you should run for that seat.
Well, I went back and I did a search on Star Tribune stories on this, and it was always like, pro-pot candidate is trying to be the spoiler. It was kind of one of those things, as opposed to they're running a fake third-party candidate. Now, when a Republican is in danger, oh my, can you believe this? This is, how dare they do this? Oh, come on, man. At least, first of all, if this makes you as outraged as the Star Tribune seems to be, well, then where was this outrage when it was clear that Gazelka, I think it was Gazelka, got caught calling these guys and offering money to run? Where was your outrage then? And is it just or are you going to, when we have another case of this in the future? That affects a Democrat, is that no big deal at that point? I mean, I don't like the double-sided nature of this.
No, not at all. And I mean, it's certainly not good to run these fake third-party candidates, but if one party's got to do it, you kind of have to fight fire with fire.
Well, the Democrats have nothing to do with this guy. This is some other kind of Facebook group, but yet they're, the incensed outrage. I mean, well, that's not the other party doing it like the Republicans did with the Democrats. Where was your outrage then? I mean, now, to give Brianna Bierschbach credit, she did run a story, but that was after about 4 or 5 pro-third-party candidate stories back then, even when it was pretty clear the Republicans were running the third-party candidates. Now dope's legal, and doping is seriously legal. A main reason it is because of those third-party candidates. So thanks, Republicans. Now they've taken that completely off the table. And I don't think they're trying to run any Green Party candidates, are they? I've not heard of any.
I have not seen or heard of any Green Party candidates, no. I think some of the legalized cannabis candidates still might be on the ballot, even though I don't know what they're really campaigning on.
Make it double illegal. Double legal. I don't know either. One quick thing here before we get to Coolican. Kathy Griffin is coming to the Pantages Theater on October 11th. I've got tickets to give away sometime this hour, so listen for your chance to win. Also, I want to encourage people to go to the Gailey Show, JP Darbagosian's great show. Go to their Instagram page, follow them there, and one of the people that goes and follows this week on that Instagram page for the Gailey Show will also win a pair of tickets, but that's going to go throughout the week. I got a pair of tickets to give away sometime this hour, so we'll be doing that. What are you and Patrick Coolican talking about?
Well, we got two main topics we're talking about today with Patrick. One is going to be this fraud we've been seeing from autism centers in Minnesota.
And saw that story.
Yeah, and there's a first-hand account from someone who is an employee at a number of these facilities who has some first-hand accounts about how things were really not run as well as they could be at these facilities with people who weren't properly trained and kids who weren't being properly monitored. So we're going to talk about that. And then the second half has to do with Republicans really not doing a very good job vetting their candidates for state legislature or other offices. I mean, it seems like we've talked about this every week, whether it's been from Royce White, of course, everyone's favorite, who is running from U.S. Senate. And, of course, we had Pape last week, who we were talking about, who has his extreme anti-abortion views. And now we have a new guy we're going to be talking about today. He is running up in District 7B up on the Iron Range.
Juarez, yeah.
Yeah, who's got some interesting social media posts, to put it lightly, that we'll be talking about that are not exactly good, and they include celebrating white pride.
Yeah, they haven't. Oh, I've got something after you're done with Coolican. I got some things to talk about as well. But yeah, the GOP not exactly giving us their best and brightest at this point. It is Patrick Coolican from the Minnesota Reformer talking to Brett right here on AM 950.
AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. Brett Johnson with you here on a Tuesday afternoon. And as usual on Tuesdays, we are joined by the editor-in-chief of one of the best journalism sources you'll find in Minnesota and possibly even the entire country. That is the Minnesota Reformer. Patrick Coolican is the editor-in-chief of the Minnesota Reformer, and he joins us today as we are going to be chatting about some of the stories that they have been working on over the past few days, including a new report talking about autism centers in Minnesota and an employee who tried to report some abuses that she witnessed and largely was not acted upon by the Department of Human Services. Plus, we'll be talking about the Republican Party of Minnesota not doing the best job vetting their candidates. So lots to get to today. Let's get to it. Patrick, thanks so much for coming back on the show.
Always a pleasure.
So we talked about this earlier this year, the fact that the FBI and federal officials were going to be investigating Minnesota's autism program. And now we may have a firsthand account as to at least partially why and how federal investigators are examining potential Medicaid fraud in the state autism program, as, of course, the Reformer reported back in June. Now, the number of autism therapy centers in Minnesota have increased dramatically, 700% in the past 5 years, while payments to providers have increased a whopping 3,000%. Dina Winter had a chance to speak to an autism center employee who raised serious concerns about how these centers operate and treat their children. And we're going to talk about what the employee said and larger issues with Minnesota's autism program. So, first question I have for you is this: what are some of the issues with treatment of children that this employee saw when visiting a few of these places? Because it sounds like she had some suspicions and then gained employment at a few of these autism centers and then really witnessed some questionable behavior and questionable practices at a number of these autism facilities.
Right. She wrote in a note to the Department of Human Services that I and other former employees witnessed some neglect regarding clients' education needs and self-care. The client's goals aren't being run by the behavioral therapist there, and what she indicates is that what's possibly happening is that there is a kind of pressure being brought to bear on some parents and for the sake of profits rather than care of the children. And we talked to another person, a public school teacher, who managed to get herself into a few of these centers, and she was also surprised to see really a lack of training and treatment, education and treatment materials for the children, which is obviously a surprise in an environment that's supposed to be an intense educational and therapeutic environment for children who are on the autism spectrum disorder. And so what's just as concerning, though, I think, about these accounts is that the one woman who is a former supervisor at a place called Smart Therapy Center, which, by the way, I should note we have no indication that they're under investigation or face any legal jeopardy. But this woman that worked there, she detailed her concerns and sent them to the Department of Human Services. She actually contacted us first, and then we kind of led her to the Department of Human Services, and they didn't respond. Now, it's possible that they were able to investigate without her input, but that seems unlikely. I mean, I think if somebody comes to the police, for instance, with a complaint about a criminal complaint about somebody, I think it's generally the practice that you would interview the witness. So she has not heard. DHS says that we get a lot of complaints. We look into all of them except the ones that we don't need to. And, of course, they say that we're against fraud, and we set up programs, new programs to try to prevent it. But I should note also that this investigation of the autism program arose out of the now notorious Feeding Our Future scandal, and that was the pandemic era food relief program in which people were using fake invoices and fake child names to steal roughly at least $250 million. And what the federal investigators found apparently is that there was some commonality between the Feeding Our Future scammers, and then they often would have these autism centers. They were also operating autism centers, and so once you find out that someone is running a fraudulent operation in one realm, you certainly get suspicious about another. And then also when you look at you mentioned the growth of the program, and to be fair, the program is new, and it took advocates for autistic children a long time to get the state to get Medicaid to pay for the treatment, and I think we'd all agree that that's important, and we're glad they do it. But once the program gets into place, the growth, you would expect some growth, significant growth, because it's a new program, but the growth has been pretty astounding, and we certainly have some questions about how legitimate some of these centers are, and apparently the feds do as well.
Well, I think one of the big challenges that the DHS faces is the fact that, many of these autism centers they all operate without a licensing system, which can really pose a lot of challenges for the DHS when it comes to tracking and preventing fraud, when, for the most part, you really don't have a licensing system that you can use to track this, correct?
Yeah, bizarre, because child care centers face really pretty strict scrutiny, but these autism centers do not, and I think that's turned out to be a key bit of regulatory arbitrage on the part of the scammers. So just some real basic stuff like staff to child ratio and that kind of stuff is just not tracked. And so the legislature, thankfully, instructed DHS to come back with a plan for a potential licensing, and so we may see that in the coming years. I think that seems like a prudent idea, and especially if and when we wind up seeing charges come out of this investigation.
I'm curious about this angle, too, because as Dina writes, she mentions that immigrant providers have claimed discrimination by the Department of Human Services in the past. So I'm curious how this factors into the current investigation, especially from accounts from Somali parents saying that non-minority agencies typically don't provide culturally appropriate training to their employees and necessarily provide the best care for children in all these cases. So that certainly is a reason, too, why we've had such explosive explosive growth in this industry, and that does add another layer to this when we do have a number, when we do have a big problem with the Somali community when it comes to these care at autism facilities, when statistics have shown that they've been having a higher rate of autism as compared to the rest of the population throughout Minnesota.
Yeah, the tragedy here is that at the same time that we think that there is significant fraud in the program, you have children who are not getting services that they need and not getting the right therapy and education that they need and deserve. And so that really calls attention to the how corrosive government fraud is, because you're really taking money from people who need it. There's a reason the program is there, and not only are you taking money from people who need it and creating a shortage, but you're also you're eroding public trust in the program. And so now every time anybody mentions, or I'm afraid that soon in the future, if there are charges that follow the investigation, whenever anybody mentions autism funding, people will almost unconsciously become skeptical that we should have this because it's apparently ripe with fraud. When in fact, we have learned so much about autism in the past couple decades, and how to treat it, and the necessity of early and comprehensive treatment. So we need it, but we need it to be run efficiently and without fraud.
Well, we've only scratched the surface on what Dina wrote about this. Again, the title of her article is "A Former Autism Center Employee Tried to Report Fraud to the State and Nobody Responded." Make sure you give that a read over at MinnesotaReformer.com. MinnesotaReformer.com, as there's lots more there we didn't have a chance to get to, including reaction from the Smart Therapy Center and other providers in terms of what this employee, who wanted to remain anonymous, was talking about what she saw when she visited a few of these autism centers. Again, read that over at MinnesotaReformer.com. Want to switch now to the political realm and continue a theme that we've been following as part of our Minnesota Reformer conversations that we've been having on Tuesday, and that has to do with supposed moderate Republicans running in competitive seats that have, well, checkered histories, to say the least. We've talked about Steve Pape and his extreme anti-abortion views. Then, of course, there's Royce White, who is running for U.S. Senate, and his very lengthy baggage of past statements and past legal troubles. Then the Star Tribune has an article on first-term Representative Jeff Dotseth and domestic abuse charges back from 2008. And now we have a new person. This is Cal Warwas, who is running in District 7B in the Minnesota House, which is an Iron Range seat centered around the Virginia area in Minnesota. And this is a relatively close district, as the DFLer won it by only a 51-48 margin back in 2022. So Cal Warwas is the Republican candidate, and he says he's running to restore balance to state government so that lawmakers from both parties can discuss and negotiate issues that are important to all people and groups of our state. However, previous social media posts about climate denial, anti-LGBTQ rhetoric, and white pride might say otherwise with his supposed moderate streak that he's trying to promote in his campaign. So I want to talk about the larger issue of problems with Republicans vetting their candidates. But first, let's talk a little bit more about Warwas. Walk us through some of his controversial social media posts that he's made in the past, because as I mentioned earlier, there are a number of very questionable social media posts that he's made over the past few years that fly in the face of his supposed...
He's been very active and vocal on social media, especially before he decided to run for this swing seat on the Iron Range, currently represented by Dave Littlegaard. So I think Republicans think this is a really strong pickup opportunity, especially in a presidential election year where they're running with Donald Trump. But Warwas has repeatedly shared posts and written about climate change being a hoax. In 2019, he shared a Twitter post by a climate denier, and he said himself, "I've said this for years, lying to kids, making climate," quote, scare quotes around science, a de facto public religion, then using that collective voice to sway public opinion and vote so elite socialists can take away our freedoms. And he used the hashtag climate hoax. Lots of this kind of stuff. And of course, Chris Ingram, our reporter, a data maven, he points out that global warming is affecting places like St. Louis County more than and northeastern Minnesota more than almost any place in the country, other than outside in the lower 48, certainly. So that's certainly interesting. There's a lot of anti-LGBTQ views, especially more lately with the trend of attacking trans people. My favorite is he doesn't like the PBS show Arthur, which he called harmful to children after an episode featured a male rat named Dr. Ratburn marrying an aardvark chocolatier named Patrick. So don't let your kids watch Arthur. And then also he throws out this idea that of quote unquote white pride, and the white supremacists frequently their soft approach is to say, well, why is it okay for people to have black pride or Mexican pride, but you can't have white pride? So yeah, kind of that's I think I trust that that's who he actually is, and he's been given advice to stay away from that kind of stuff because it doesn't sell that well in Minnesota. But he didn't go back and scrub his social media like a lot of candidates do. And so Chris just did some gumshoe reporting and went through all those posts, and lo and behold, look what he found.
Well, this does point to a larger issue that the Republican Party of Minnesota is facing, and it's largely the fact that they don't know how to vet their own candidates, because if you look at the state legislature right now, Republicans only need to flip one seat to win control of the state Senate. Although I should point out, at least this year, only one state Senate seat is even up for election. But the state House, Republicans only need to flip 4 seats in order to take control of that chamber. So I think it would be one thing if we were seeing someone like Warwas and his past views in a very deep red seat where it might not make much of a difference, same as we were talking about with Pape earlier. If that were a deep red seat, maybe some of his extreme anti-abortion views wouldn't be that big of a deal. But these are very purple seats, and the types of districts that Republicans are going to need to win if they're going to flip control of the state House of Representatives. And it just does show a big problem that Republicans have when it comes to vetting their candidates and getting people on the ballot that actually have a chance to win and can appeal to some of those swing type of voters.
Yeah, I mean, our reporters have done a good job finding some of this stuff, and as you noted, what's interesting is the types of districts where we're finding. Because what we did is we isolated 15 swing districts. Of course, the House is on the ballot this year. The Senate only has the one special Senate election. There's only one Senate race this year. So we focused on 15 races in the House that we think will determine control of the House, and then the one Senate race. And so we keep finding this stuff, and it's not like, as you mentioned, these are not far-right districts. These are not big Trumpy districts. They're marginal, very close districts, either one way or the other, and you really want to appeal to independents and folks from the other party, but that's not who controls the nominating process, really on both sides, but especially on the Republican side, where the sort of Trumpist activists seem to have taken over a lot of party infrastructure. And then they still are strong believers in the convention endorsement. And they also, the state party is weak. They don't have enough resources really for any kind of backgrounding or research staff that you really need to do. One thing that people don't quite understand about opposition research is you don't just do research on the other party, you do it on yourself. And that seems to be lacking because in a lot of cases they also seem to be kind of strangely blindsided when these stories are brought to their attention. So yeah, for right now there's it's a bit lopsided, but anything can happen. So I don't think Democrats should get too comfortable at this point, because they should all remember 2016.
Absolutely, and the fact that, unfortunately, many people don't pay that close attention to their races for the state legislature, so some of these types of views that we've been talking about, extremist views from these Republican candidates, still very much fly under the radar.
They need to read the Reformer.
They do, absolutely. Go to MinnesotaReformer.com, make sure you subscribe, and then you can find out some of these supposed moderate Republicans really aren't so moderate. One final thing I wanted to follow up on, and that has to do with Kathleen Folk, who is another Republican candidate for the State House of Representatives in the West Metro area. We talked about her last week and some issues she had with residency and connections to, of course, the Xcel Energy utility. And I understand you guys will be having a follow-up on what we talked about last week with Kathleen Folk, and more specifically her ties to Xcel Energy, correct?
Right, and more broadly, the utility industry. So we've been able to isolate her campaign finance contributors and the really significant ties of her list of contributors to the utility industry. And I think what's notable here is that the utilities rely so heavily on government. It's because it's so closely regulated because they're monopolies. And of course, what they do is has all kinds of health and safety and environmental concerns, and so they're closely regulated. So it's just really important for the utilities. I mean, they spend millions of dollars lobbying the legislature and the Public Utility Commission every year, and so it would appear that a future Senator Folk would have, or I should say, the utilities would have an ally in the legislature. She says that she will be fair and balanced in her approach and support a balanced energy mix. But I think it's important in politics to know who your friends are, and so it's pretty clear if you look at her campaign finance who would be who's supporting her and what that would mean for access for the utilities.
Well, you can read more about that as that'll be out later this week over at MinnesotaReformer.com, MinnesotaReformer.com. And make sure you give MinnesotaReformer.com a follow for the latest in Minnesota news and politics, where you can learn much more about all these candidates running for the state legislature and their great investigative reporting they do as well. We have been speaking with Patrick Coolican, who is the editor-in-chief of the Minnesota Reformer. Patrick is. All right, let's take a break and send things back over to Matt McNeil on AM 950.
Every time you turn around, she's always in your pocket.
AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota, the Matt McNeil Show. Good to have you with us today. Kathy Griffin is going to be at the Pantages Theater on October 11th. I've got a pair of tickets to give away right now. 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. Caller number 5, you're going to get a pair of tickets to go see Kathy Griffin at the Pantages on October 11th. Good luck. 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. So I want to start. I got this message, and you sign up for, if you're media, you can sign up for these media alerts that come on in regards to the press conferences, stuff like that that's going to happen. And today, DFL Chair Ken Martin and DFL House Majority Leader Jamie Long responded to the bombshell reporting detailed years of violence, threats, and abuse perpetrated by GOP Representative Jeff Dotseth, the Republican from 11A, which, once again, is just south of Duluth in that area there. It's Kettle River area. He's up that way. These are allegations again that he abused his detailing years of violence against his ex-wife and her son, who is a minor at the time of the abuse. And a reminder, in the story we talked yesterday, the son still today doesn't want to talk that much about it because he is still scared. Wow. Ken Martin and Long will call on the House Minority Leader, Lisa DeMuth, to expel Dotseth from the Minnesota House GOP caucus, and will call on Dotseth to suspend his campaign and answer questions about his years of violent and unhinged behavior. That was today. A pretty in my mind, a pretty basic thing. If you haven't read that story, I posted it yesterday. It is pretty atrocious what this person had done. I think one of the things which also kind of bothered me about this is the idea that at least one other Republican knew about this and didn't say a dang thing. Bombshell reporting in the Star Tribune details how in 2008, Dotseth was arrested and charged with domestic violence and violent behavior against a pattern stretching back many years. Sworn affidavit filings from his ex-wife and her son. Dotseth's ex-wife had detailed how Dotseth would hit, punch, choke, kick, abuse, and threaten her with murder, then reached for comment by the Star Tribune. Dotseth's ex-stepson declined to comment, citing fear for his own safety, which is pretty stark, to say the least. Outrageously, it appears the GOP legislators knew about these incidents and withheld that information from the public. One GOP legislator, Representative Paul Novotny, was even one of the responding police officers who took Dotseth's statement and arrested him for assault of his then-wife. After his arrest, Dotseth was placed under an order of protective requiring Dotseth to not contact his wife, denying him non-supervised visitation and their daughter, and ordering him to surrender his firearms. Yeah, he sounds like a horrible guy. And once again, this is not new. I believe this whole thing happened a while back. Yet, well, for sure, definitively, we know Novotny knew of this guy's history. Here's where this becomes unbelievable. Because earlier this year, Nicole Mitchell, the senator, had her incident where she is alleged to have broken into her stepmother's house. Once again, we talked about this. Have a will. For God's sakes, have a will. Because if your thought is your second wife or your second husband's going to work with your kids from the first marriage and everything's going to work out great, you're a fool. You have to lay out all this stuff and you have to be very specific. And it sounds like this is another case of, once again, things were promised to to Nicole Mitchell, and things went sideways, and so we don't know what exactly happened, but it's not a good thing. I want to note for the record, Governor Tim Walz thought she should resign. Publicly said that. Ken Martin also said she should resign. I said I think she should resign. I think she should resign just to go get that taken care of, because that's a complicated thing and it's not there. And Republicans all over the state, including out in the East Metro, where some really ugly Republicans were dancing on Nicole Mitchell's grave and laughing and joking and doing this. They were doing that as they knew about Dotseth, and we're going to take the moral high road. Now, I don't know which Republicans knew about Dotseth, but the allegation here from the DFL is multiple Republicans knew about this guy, and we know for sure Novotny knew about this guy because he was there. If only there were, I don't know, statements from Republicans about this incident, and that they could talk about it. As a matter of fact, let's go with the House Minority Leader, Lisa DeMuth of 13A. She posted a tweet saying Governor Walz is right. Elected officials need to be held to a higher standard. While Senator Mitchell is entitled to due process for a legal case, she cannot be allowed to damage the institution by being the 34th vote of her bipartisan bills while facing felony charges. This is the House Minority Leader going out of her way talking about, we have standards. Did she know about Dotseth? Her district doesn't really match up with Dotseth. She's over just west of St. Cloud, but did she know about Dotseth? Did she know about Dotseth at the time that she's putting out this, I have moral standards? Let's go to Novotny, because this, I'll tell you what, there's rich and then there's rich. This is from the Capitol newsletter from Representative Paul Novotny from Friday, April 26. Quote, Senator Mitchell update. Now, I want to remind you, Novotny was a police officer who responded to Dotseth's abuse call and arrested him, took his statement and arrested him. He knew he was serving in the Minnesota House with a guy who had some serious problems. He knew it. He was there. But yet, it did not stop him from making this statement. And let me read through this. Like I said, it is rich. Many of you reached out to me this week asking for my thoughts on the news that DFL Senator Nicole Mitchell was arrested and formally charged with first-degree burglary. If you'd like to read more about the incident, including the long-form complaint, was filed by the Detroit Lakes Police Department. As a longtime Sherburne County Sheriff's deputy, I have first-hand experience responding to 911 calls where there is an active burglary taking place, and I can speak to the seriousness of these crimes. Breaking and entering an occupied residence is extremely dangerous to all involved, and the details of the complaint are disturbing. You know what else is disturbing? When you come to an abuse call there, officer. Yep, or deputy. If Senator Mitchell truly is concerned about the well-being of family members, she should have contacted Detroit Lake Police Department and asked them to send an officer to get over their wellness check. I conducted hundreds of these wellness checks during my time in law enforcement, and they are very routine. Mitchell deserves her day in court, and I'm confident the justice system will handle the case in a fair manner. Public officials are and should be held to a high standard. If any other person in a position of trust, such as a police officer or a teacher, was charged with a crime of violence, they would have been placed on administrative leave and not allowed to come to work until the case was adjudicated. Stay tuned, as this is likely to have several more developments before it is resolved. He himself is saying, okay, once again, Novotny knew Dotseth. He knew Dotseth had these charges against him. He knew it. And yet, Mr. Cock of the Walk, Mr. I'm going to show you what, is out here when Mitchell is in trouble. All of a sudden if any other person in position of trust, such as a police officer or teacher, was charged with a crime of violence, they would have been placed on administrative leaves. Novotny, listen here, you punk. Where was your attitude towards Dotseth? Oh, that's right, your sphincter is tightening up all of a sudden, Novotny? Now all of a sudden, cat got your tongue, don't it? Now all of a sudden, you don't want to talk about it, do you? Because all of a sudden, I didn't mean that. I mean, I was talking about burglary. I'm not talking about abusing your wife and kid. Where are you, coward, Novotny? You knew about this. And you didn't say a thing as that guy was representing a district in the state. Mr. Hey, this person should resign. You, Novotny, that's Elk River, you, sir, are a coward for allowing this person to go serve in that house and not saying anything. And like I said, I can see you running away from your actions now, sir. You must have, it tells me a lot about you that this is how you act. Oh, if it's a Democrat in charge, let me get my pompous jackass attitude out. But it's a guy you know was abusing his wife and kid. And all of a sudden, I don't think it's my place to poke my head. I don't want to talk about it. Screw you, Novotny. I'm calling you out, man. That's crap. Your crap sheriff's work. Crap work, dude. Just shut your mouth. Tell you what, I'll take a break. Come on back. When I do return, let's go to Dotseth's page himself. Shall we? We shall. 952-946-6205. 952-946-6205. It's the Matt McNeil Show right here on your Tuesday. AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. It's the Matt McNeil Show. Patrick, who is our winner of tickets to go see Kathy Griffin over at the Pantages Theater?
Joan in Minneapolis, congratulations.
Joan, congratulations there. I've got tickets to give away all week long. And once again, go to the Gailey Show Instagram page, follow them, and you'll be entered in this week to possibly win a pair of tickets as well. All right? All right. So I pointed out that Novotny, the House rep up in Elk River, who is apparently a responding officer to the Jeff Dotseth, abuse call, he knew Dotseth was there. This is back in 2008, and yet did nothing or didn't demand Dotseth step down, although he was Mr. Uppity when it came to Nicole Mitchell, and demanding that Nicole Mitchell, this person should be standing, should be resigning. And then, of course, DeMuth, the House Minority Leader, she as well said, you can't have this when it came to Nicole Mitchell. But all of a sudden now, she said anything? Nope. Let's go to Dotseth himself. This is the guy, once again, some seriously disturbing allegations against him of some horrible abuse with the affidavits that were signed by his ex-wife and his own kid, who tried to get in between him and his mother multiple times and was abused himself. He didn't say anything about Nicole Mitchell. He didn't say anything about Nicole Mitchell, but what he did is he reposted a, I'm thinking about it emoji on a Senator Glenn Grunhagen post. People want to dismiss the recent burglary arrest of Mitchell as merely a family feud. If you put yourself in the shoes of the stepmom whose home was broke into, you might see it differently. It sounds like she was terrified, and rightly so. Hey, Glenn, you know who else was probably terrified? Yeah, Dotseth's ex and his kid. But I'm guessing you're not saying anything right now, are you, Glenn? Mitchell needs to resign immediately, and if she will not, the DFL Senate must request it. Same on the Senate DFL for trying to protect her, for advance their agenda. If it was a Republican who committed this burglary, they'd be screaming from the rooftops about a resignation. And now, first of all, I want to remind you, Governor Walz and Ken Martin both did call for Mitchell to resign. So did I. And now it's your chance, Senator Glenn Grunhagen. You can call for Dotseth to resign. Because I can tell you what, I don't want to downplay the allegations of a burglary, but that is not anything that got even close to what Dotseth did. So I'm sure Glenn Grunhagen will be screaming from the rooftops about Dotseth's resigning. I'm sure he will. Oh, is it okay? Is abusing your wife and kid okay in this case there, Glenn? I'm just asking the question. Are you okay with a little abuse? Are you okay with that? Is that what you're saying, Glenn Grunhagen? Because I'm calling you out. Now, once again, Dotseth posted this on his own page, and he knew his own history. This guy should not, and I want to repeat, should not be anywhere near at all in any capacity, anywhere near the Minnesota House. And I am consistent. Yet I guarantee you not a single Republican has got the guts to come on out right now and say, you know what? Nope, this is a bridge too far. Nope, we can't tolerate this. No, you guys are just staring at the ground, kicking dirt around, going, I don't know why you're making a big deal out of it. Once again, Dot's ex-wife and her son and her son detailed how Dotson would hit, punch, choke, kick, abuse, and threaten them with murder. His son is still scared today. And Novotny knew, one of the responding officers. DeMuth is not saying anything. And Dotseth, well, I'm not holding my breath. The Republicans will find a spine or morality. Native Roots Radio is up next. Have a good one. We're back tomorrow. Till then, see ya.